Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I thought for today's video, I would revisit some of my older favorites. I was kind of planning out my videos for the rest of the year, and at the end of December, I wrote down like best products of 2019, and I thought it would be fun to go back and take a look at some of my favorites from previous years and see if they are still favorites now. So I wrote down all of the products that I mentioned as my absolute favorite products of 2017, and I wanted to go through them and let you guys know if they are still favorites, if I've decluttered them, if I've replaced them, or if I just no longer like the products. I thought it would be a fun way to see how my preferences have changed and see which products have really stood the test of time. So I hope you guys enjoy today's video. Let's jump into it and I'll kind of go through the order that I mentioned them in that video. So there were 3 different palettes that I mentioned as my absolute favorite palettes of 2017. The one that I still love, that I still consider a favorite, is the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. This is probably my favorite naked palette from Urban Decay. I just feel like the shadows perform really well, but I love the colors in here. I like a good warm toned palette, but I feel like this one is just so well coordinated. So whether I'm going for a really natural look or a little bit more of an intense dramatic look, this is such a great option. The shadows blend really well, they perform great, and I always love how my makeup look turns out when I use this one. I also mentioned the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette, and I would say that this is still one of my favorite palettes. I don't think it's one of my favorite palettes of all time. Between the two, I do like the Urban Decay Naked Heat a little bit better, but I still like this one. I think that it performs really well. There are a lot of gorgeous matte shadows in here, some great metallics. In my mind, it's a really nice everyday palette if you want a slightly warm toned eyeshadow look, but nothing over the top. There was a palette in that video that I actually ended up decluttering. I went to look for it today when I sat down to gather all of the products, and I don't have it. So I think I must have given it away or decluttered it. That was the Tarte Make Believe in Yourself eye palette. I really, really loved that palette. So I don't know why I decluttered it. I think it's because I haven't reached for it in a really long time. There are so many other gorgeous metallic formulas that I like at this point that I felt like that wasn't necessarily one of my go-tos any longer, but it was such a good palette. I totally got my money's worth out of that one because I used it so much. I also mentioned just the ColourPop pressed powder eyeshadows as favorites. I think at that time, in 2017, I don't know that they had created any of their pressed powder palettes. I think they were just doing singles, and I loved the formula the second that they released it. Before they even got into eyeshadow palettes, I was such a big fan, and at this point, it's my favorite eyeshadow formula. So that one has definitely stood the test of time. I feel like it's even moved up higher on my list because ColourPop's formula is just the absolute best for me. I think their shadows are so blendable, so great, and it's kind of crazy to think of how many palettes they've created since I filmed that video in 2017. There were 2 eyeliners that I mentioned, a drugstore option and a high-end option. The drugstore option was the NYX That's the Point eyeliner, which I do think is a good eyeliner, but I have not repurchased that in a really, really long time. I am not super big into felt tip liners for the moment being, so that's really not something that I've reached for in a while. I also discovered the ColourPop liquid liner this year, which I believe is a few dollars less expensive. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily a favorite. I don't think it's a bad product. It's just not something that I really use or reach for. The high-end liner that I mentioned was the Kat Von D Tattooed Liquid Liner, and I have replaced that one. That one is no longer a favorite. I've replaced it with the Urban Decay Perversion Liquid Liner. I love this liquid liner. This is the best liner that I've ever tried. It is so rich and dark. It glides on the eyes so easily. It does have a brush tip, and it stays in place perfectly. It's my favorite liquid liner in the entire world, and I don't know, I can't imagine ever finding one that tops this. So I guess we'll see. Maybe in 2 years if I film a video comparing my favorites to 2019. We'll see if I've replaced it, but I don't think that I will. Okay, so there were 2 mascaras that I mentioned as my favorites. The first one is the Essence False Lash Effect Mascara, which I do still like. I actually haven't used that one a whole lot in 2019, to be honest with you guys, because I fell in love with the CoverGirl Exhibitionist. So when it comes to affordable drugstore mascaras, the CoverGirl one is my favorite. I do love the Essence Lash Princess, and I think it's such a great option if you want really long lashes. So it is still a product that I enjoy, but I wouldn't say it's my absolute favorite at this point. The high-end mascara that I mentioned is the IT Cosmetics Superhero. I actually have a backup of this mascara because it is one of my favorites. This one makes your lashes so dramatic, so intense, voluminous, long. It really is one of my favorite high-end mascaras. This is definitely still one of my favorites for sure, so that hasn't changed either. So this has been a favorite for a really, really long time. I think it's really nice. It typically does go on sale during like Ulta's 21 Days of Beauty or like sometimes on Black Friday. So that's when I usually buy like a backup and stock up on it because I like to be able to get it for a discount. But if you like intensely dramatic lashes, this one's a great option. My favorite blush of 2017 was the Too Faced Papadone Peach Blush, and I do still like this blush, but I feel like there are other blushes in my collection that have really come very close to this one. I actually was trying to decide if I should declutter it because it has gotten pretty old, and I kept it in my collection to see if I could find a drugstore or affordable replacement for it, and I do feel like at this point I have other blushes that compare, like Milani's Luminoso, one of the butter blushes looks very similar, so I do feel like I could declutter this, but again, it is a blush that I loved. I thought the color was great, the formula was great, but at this point, I definitely have other formulas that come very, very close, so I wouldn't consider it a staple for me. This kind of surprised me. My favorite highlighter formula of the year was the Makeup Revolution Vivid Baked Highlighters. I remember loving those so much. There were two really pretty like subtle pink shades that I wore all the time. They were my go-to, but I actually don't have those in my collection any longer. I have decluttered them, and highlighters are something that I've really gotten into in like the past year or two, so I've definitely expanded my collection a lot since then and found other formulas that I love more than those Makeup Revolution highlighters. Those were a little bit more on the dry side. They were baked products, so I definitely prefer more of like a creamy highlighter like the Becca highlighters or the Flower Beauty highlighters. I like a nice lightweight thin formula, so those Makeup Revolution ones just probably wouldn't stack up against my favorites at this point, and they have been decluttered for a while. My favorite bronzer of the year was the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer. I do still have this in my collection and I do still love it. I wouldn't say that it's my absolute favorite, but it's one of my top 3 formulas. Or I just ranked my bronzers. Where did I rank this one? I think I ranked it at number 3. There are 2 other bronzers that I like just a little bit better, but it is still one of my favorite products. I think it's really good. As for foundation, my favorite foundation was the Urban Decay All Nighter. I loved that foundation so much. I think I went through like 6 or 7 bottles of it. It was my only foundation. Like I didn't really wear anything else other than that one. At this point, it is no longer a foundation that I love. I feel like it's a very heavy formula, and whenever I wore it, like I wore it a few times in 2019, I just felt like my skin or my foundation looked and felt so heavy on my skin. I do still like full coverage matte foundations, but I've actually replaced that with the Fenty foundation. The Fenty foundation has really nice coverage. It is a matte foundation, but I feel like it's a lot more lightweight and comfortable on the skin, and it doesn't look as heavy. So the Urban Decay All Nighter has been decluttered from my collection. It is no longer a favorite, but you guys, I loved that. I raved about it for so long. The other foundation that I loved was the Hourglass Vanish Seamless Stick Foundation. I think that I still like that, but I don't have it. I remember using it up completely, and I didn't repurchase it because we were heading into like spring, and it's really only a foundation that I wear during the winter time because it is more of a hydrating foundation, but I don't know, it's been a long time since I've used it. I actually said in a recent video that I was kind of thinking about repurchasing it because I did really love it. So that might actually be a purchase of mine as we're heading back into the winter. So we'll see about that one. I don't have anything against it. I just used up the product completely, which is why I don't have it any longer. I had 2 primers that I mentioned as favorites. The first one is the Smashbox Photo Finish Primerizer. This one really has stood the test of time. I haven't been able to find anything that I like as much as this one. It gives my skin the most beautiful, smooth, hydrated appearance and feel, and I just think it's perfect. So I still love this one so much. It definitely is still one of my favorites. I also mentioned the Milk Makeup Blur Stick as a favorite. That's no longer a favorite. I remember decluttering that one, and I feel like it's fine, but I also feel like it's not my go-to. When it comes to primers, I definitely prefer more of a moisturizing primer compared to a blurring or smoothing primer. But I will say that I've been loving the Catrice I can't find it. I just filmed a video talking about it. It's like their anti-shine primer, which is a mattifying primer, but it's also a smoothing primer. And I feel like that's been a really good alternative to the Milk Makeup Blur Sticks. I mentioned the ColourPop No Filter Concealer as my favorite concealer. I still love this product, but I don't typically use it as a concealer. I like using it as like a foundation. I'll kind of, apply a little bit all over my face, blend it out, and I'm good to go on days where I don't want to take the time to do more of a liquid foundation. It's so quick and easy to blend out on the skin, and it has good coverage. It stays in place well. It's one of my favorite foundations, but I don't typically use it as a concealer. I have a couple of other concealers that I like better, including the Too Faced Born This Way concealer. That's kind of my go-to, but I still like this product. I just use it in a little bit of a different way. I used to have the biggest obsession with the Kat Von D Lock-It Powder Foundation, but I have replaced it. I swear my foundation routine used to be ridiculous because I would use the Urban Decay All Nighter foundation, and then on top of that I would put the Kat Von D Lock-It Powder foundation, and I think I was just like wanting like a very intensely full coverage matte base. But I feel like if I did that these days, it would just be so much. So I don't know. I used to love that combination, but I have replaced that. I actually use the Flower Beauty Light Illusion Perfecting Powder. This is a really, really good option. It's affordable. It gives you really nice coverage. You can use a brush, or if you go in with a damp sponge, it does give you more of like that full coverage look. So I had two different liquid lipstick favorites in 2017. The first one was the Smashbox Always On Liquid Lipstick Formula, which I loved that formula so much, but I did a lipstick declutter not too long afterwards, maybe like a year afterwards, and like all of my Smashbox liquid lipsticks had dried out completely. So for the high-end price tag, I just can't justify the formula. Even though I like wearing it, it just dries out a little bit too quickly for me to, want to pay that much money to replace them in my collection. So, to be honest with you guys, I don't wear a lot of liquid lipsticks these days anyways, so I don't mind, but I remember using that formula so much, and I feel like it would still be a favorite if I knew that it would last a little bit longer than it does. I also really loved the ColourPop Ultra Satin Lips. I don't wear those any longer. I can't remember the last time that I really wore a ColourPop liquid lipstick. I feel like at the time when liquid lipsticks were new and exciting, it was so nice that ColourPop did really fun colors and they were really affordable. So I really did love the formula, and I loved that they had so many great options. But again, I feel like at this point there are so many other formulas that I like better, and I just don't wear a lot of liquid lipsticks, so those are no longer a favorite. And then my favorite lip gloss was the Buxom lip gloss in the shade Dolly. I no longer have Dolly because I used it up, and I feel like maybe I got a little bit sick of it because it was in my project pan, but I do have quite a few other Buxom lip glosses. They are still some of my favorites. They're not my absolute favorite. I think that I know that I like the Fenty Gloss formula better than Buxom, but Buxom's up there. It's probably in my top 3 as well. So I do still like the formula, but I wouldn't consider it my absolute favorite. I would say out of this list, I still use a good amount of these products in my makeup routine. I don't know that a ton of them are like absolute staples for me. There were a couple like the Smashbox Primerizer, the It Cosmetics Mascara, the Naked Heat Palette, but it's more so I love these products and I use them on occasion, but I've found other products that just kind of outperform them a little bit. And then of course there were a few products that have definitely been replaced in my makeup collection as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I thought it was kind of fun to go back in time, see which products were my favorite and how I like them today. So if you guys enjoyed today's video, let me know. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon with a new one. Bye.